Hey Book Dragons, welcome back to my channel. Glad you could be here. Today we are talking about The Winter King by Bernard Cornwell. Let's go. So I recently finished reading The Winter King by Bernard Cornwell, and I read it based on all the glowing reviews that I had seen about it on BookTube. And I'm not a big fan of historical fiction. It doesn't really work for me that well. But I figured everybody just loved this book, or at least the majority of the reviews I saw raved about this book. And I love King Arthur legends, and so I figured, you know what? I'm going to try book one. It was on Kindle Unlimited, so I didn't have to pay anything for it. I'm paying for Kindle Unlimited, but I didn't have to buy the book, so it's not like it's going into my library, right? So I got it on Kindle Unlimited and decided to give it a shot. And I'll let you know my thoughts on it here as we go along, what I liked, what I didn't like, and things like that. So let's talk a bit about it. But first, I'll kind of give you a general overview of the setting. It is set during the Dark Ages. The Britons are at war with the Saxons, and of course you've got Irish mercenaries that are filtering into the mix and causing problems as well. You've got all the different kingdoms of Brittany fighting against each other as well, vying for power and land. It's kind of like, a lot of it's what Game of Thrones was based around, right? It's everybody wants a piece of the pie, and they this guy wants to be king, and this guy wants to be king, and they're all giving up their daughters dowries and things like that. So it's just this mess of politics and war and bloodshed, and it's great. It's fantastic. And that's one of the things I really liked about the book was some of the political intrigue and the battles. Especially there's this one scene between Arthur and Owen, who are basically on the same side, but Owen's a little more brutal, more edgy. He's everybody walks on eggshells around him. He's just not a team player necessarily. So and Arthur is out there to be an everyman, right? He wants to be everything to every person to bring about peace. And so there's this duel between him and Owen that is just fantastic. It's one of my favorite scenes in the book. So some of the action, when the action is there, it's good. And so I think that really gave the book a solid foundation. You've got all of your classic Arthur characters, more or less, by name at the very least. They are very different than the typical fantasy King Arthur that is portrayed in other books. Mary Stuart is one of my favorite authors when it comes to King Arthur. I read her series a long time ago when I was a kid. I borrowed it from my grandmother, and to this day it's still one of my favorite portrayals of King Arthur. And so coming into this, I knew it wasn't going to be like that. I knew the characters would be there, and they are, more or less. You do have King Arthur, but King Arthur in this book is more of a face. He's not the king, at least not at the time of this telling. I haven't read the other books yet, but he's not the king. He's more of a placeholder until the actual king grows up, because at the time of this telling, Uther has fathered a child to be his heir on one of the women in his court. Actually, I believe it's on his daughter-in-law. He's fathered a child on her, and that baby has been named Mordred because the original Mordred died in battle, and Arthur is a bastard. So even though he's the son of Uther, Uther does not want his bastard ruling the kingdom. So he fathers another child, names him Mordred, and Mordred is set to be the king. So there's this whole mess there. And you've got other familiar characters. You've got Nimue, but in this setting, Nimue is, she's a druid acolyte. She's training and preparing herself, studying to be a druid, and she has studied under Merlin, who is the other very familiar name in the Arthur legends. And in this story, Merlin is a high-ranking druid. He is the most well-respected and most feared of the druids. So you can see already that this is a Arthur legend that is very grounded in trying to be more rooted in historical information. Now, of course, even the author says at the end of the book, he says, we don't really have any solid information or any proof necessarily that Arthur even existed. But he was doing his best to put it in a real-world setting that we would be familiar with, because if anything, Arthur was probably a British warlord who conquered many kingdoms and brought peace to Brittany, more or less. So all of the characters in the setting, he determined to be more of a foundation in the real world. So you've got Merlin, high-ranking druid. You've got his apprentice, Nimue. He's also got another apprentice who is Morgan, who is Arthur's sister. So Morgan is another familiar character from the Arthur legends. So in this, she is also a druidic priestess of sorts, and she is very well respected and everything. So you've got all that mixed in here, but just in a very realistic setting. And then the story is told from a first-person narrative perspective of a character named Derval. Now, it's spelled Derfel, but it's pronounced Derval. I had the hardest time wrestling with the Welsh names. I found a dictionary online that showed me, specifically for this book, that showed me how the character's name should be pronounced. Thank God, otherwise I would have been totally out to lunch on it. But apparently Derfel is pronounced Derval. And he is, at least in the present time, he is a Christian monk. But prior to being a Christian monk, he was a warrior in Arthur's army and a good friend of Arthur, and he followed more or less the druidic pagan beliefs of the time prior to becoming a monk. And so he had grown up. He was a contemporary of Nimue. They were kind of childhood friends, and so they grew up together, and he became a warrior in Arthur's army. So all of this is Derval telling the story of King Arthur to another person who is doing her best to make it more palatable for the common reader. And so this person that he's telling the story to is supposedly where we're going to get all the embellishments about the magic sword Excalibur and the holy city Camelot and things like that. Whereas in this setting, Camelot did exist, it just wasn't called that. And Excalibur exists, and it was called that throughout the story just for the sake of the legend, but it went, the sword is actually called something else in the story, and I don't remember, and I'm not going to try to remember because it was this weird Welsh name. I'm just going to go with Excalibur, but Excalibur does exist, and it's feared just like it is in the legends. Arthur is feared for his prowess in battle and his adeptness at wielding Excalibur, just like in the legends we're all familiar with. But it is so different than what we're used to. If I had come to this fresh, not knowing anything about the Arthur legends, the fantasy legends of King Arthur, I probably would have enjoyed the book more. This book does have a lot going for it. Like I said before, there are some great battles, some great duels. There's a lot of good political intrigue in the book, and I kind of found myself wanting more from the story. Some of the historical elements around Druidism was pretty cool, and I just thought it was really well done. The characters were well fleshed out, I think. But for some reason, it just didn't totally work for me. And I think it is my pre-understanding of what the Arthur legend is, right? So I don't know. I felt like this was a good book, but not a great book. Will I read the other two books in the series? It's called The Warlord Chronicles, by the way. And yes, the answer is yes. I probably will read at least the second book, probably both the second and third books. Eventually, it's not going to be high on my priority list. And just for the fact that, you know, if I were to rate this in terms of a star system, I would give it a 3. It was good. It just wasn't one of those books that blew me away and made me feel like I have to read the next book in the series to know what's happening, because, you know, I know all the characters. I know generally where they're supposed to end up. So it's just not that necessary for me to continue reading the books anytime soon. I will eventually, though. One of my favorite characters throughout the whole story was Nimue, because she has this thing where she has to go through 3 major trials to become a full-fledged druid. At least in her mind, that's what it takes to become a full-fledged druidist and to meet her destiny. And I really enjoyed her character the most, I think, because you got to see the whole range of emotions and fleshing the character out, and the journey that she goes on from being a child acolyte under Merlin to eventually becoming what we would consider a full-fledged druid. She fully comes into her own at one point in the book, and I'm not going to go into details about why and how it happens, but I thought it was really interesting. There is this island where most of the people who are not wanted by society, or people who seem to have gone crazy and just completely lost their minds, there's an island called the Isle of the Dead, and basically they send all their people that they just don't want anything more to do with to this island, and they're completely forgot about. That was really interesting, because so many legends spring from stuff like that, right? And so I thought that was kind of cool. There were a lot of cool things in the book. Now that I'm thinking about it, one of the biggest things for me was it took so long to get where we were going. There was so much detail and filler and things like that maybe didn't totally need to be there. The book was about 600 pages, close to 600 pages. And I don't know, I just feel like some of the information I didn't need to know. But again, I was coming at it, thinking about the old King Arthur tales that I grew up with. So use the information that I provided you in this video to make a judgment for yourself. If you are a person who likes historical fiction, you will most likely really enjoy this book. If you are familiar with Bernard Cornwell's other series, the Saxon series, and you like that, or if you have read other things like the Master and Commander series, I've heard that that's a really popular historical fiction series as well. If you like things like that, you will most likely enjoy The Winter King and the other two books in the Warlord Chronicles. Again, I thought it was good. It just wasn't something that I would jump off a bridge to save from falling, right? I wouldn't go out of my way to read this book if I were given another chance at it, knowing what I know. But I eventually think I do want to read the other two books in the series, but it'll be a while. So, yeah. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Have you read the book? Did you enjoy it? Did you kind of have some of the same feelings as I did? I will, as normal, put a spoiler comment in the comments below where you can do all your spoiler stuff, things if you want to. And if you have not read this book, don't read the spoiler section. But if you haven't read the book, does it sound like something that you would like to read? Let me know that in the comments as well, okay? And I think that is it for The Winter King from me. Make sure you guys read more books. I'll talk to you later.